Hi, I'm Kaaren Poole, artist and author-illustrator, and today the most important thing about me is that I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you as part of Lifebook 2023. It was one of the most exciting moments of my life when I heard from Tamara that I had been accepted as a guest teacher this year, and I'm just so happy and looking forward to connecting with you, and most of all to sharing with you the joy I have from working in art. I had a corporate career, but always I did art as a hobby, and then about 20 years ago, I guess it would have been, I was retired and was fortunate enough to be able to spend a lot more time than I had previously working on art. I have worked in so many media, both 2D and 3D. I've done ceramics, jewelry, beading, needle felting, paper clay, painting, drawing, china painting, mixed media, on and on and on. Starting in 2018, I began focusing on writing and illustrating, and I write animal fiction for animal lovers of all ages, not just for children. And my message behind my writing basically is gentle animal advocacy, just continuing to put the concept out there that animals are so important as we are, and that every life matters. And I bring that into my visual art as well. This month in Lifebook, the theme is how joy and play supports our well-being, and I think it's pretty clear that it does. It gives us a break from the unhappy, painful, difficult times that we all face in our lives, and allows us to refocus on the positive. And that just helps us psychically, emotionally, and I think physically also. So I am delighted to bring to you a project that I feel is imbued with joy and play, which is these platypuses. Now, platypuses are animals that live in Australia and Tasmania, in lakes, rivers, and streams. They're wonderful swimmers, and just such intriguing animals with the bill that looks like a duck, and the webbed feet like an otter, and a tail like a beaver. But of course, they're not an amalgam of all those animals. They are platypuses, their own selves in their own beautiful ways. One of the things that I think is so much fun about this project that we're going to do together is the unpredictability of some of the techniques we're going to use, particularly in the background. So I will encourage you to let go of your need for control and just go where the piece takes you. Enjoy, have fun, don't stress. And let's get started. Good morning, and I hope you're as excited about this project as I am. These little animals are so fun to paint. They're having the time of their lives swimming around in that water filled with bubbles and water plants and who knows what. So it's a project for the imagination, it's a project to enjoy, and I think there's a few techniques that you might learn along the way. So let's start out by talking about the supplies that we're going to need. First of all, a paper. So I'm using mixed media paper by Strathmore. You can use watercolor paper as you prefer. The reason I like the mixed media paper is because it is not as textured as watercolor paper. Also, it's really engineered to take a lot of water and a lot of different media. So that's why I chose that, and I'm going to use an 11 by 14 sheet of paper for my actual piece. The image size is 9 by 12, which is in this rectangle, but I like to have a little extra margin around the edges, and well, for various reasons. One is if I want to frame it, it's going to be nice to have those edges. And also sometimes I maybe want to test a color outside the image itself. So I have this watercolor paper, or I'm sorry, mixed media paper. And then there's a few techniques we're going to be practicing. So I have an additional smaller sheet. Like I said, we'll be using that for practicing some techniques. I'm trying to flatten it out, which is why I have it sitting under here for the time being. So let's just talk about, in addition to talking about the materials used for tracing, let's talk about how we get the image onto the paper itself. So in your PDF, you have 2 sheets that together comprise the image. And what you're going to need to do is, you can see that on this one, there's an edge that doesn't have any printing on it. So just snip that off, remove that blank edge, line it up, tape it down. You can line it up, of course, better when you have this piece missing. Tape it down, and then you'll have your full-size drawing. With that full-size drawing, take a piece of tracing paper and attach it over the drawing. I use Scotch tape. It's a removable tape, and it holds the tracing in place over the paper as I'm working. And then I simply use a pencil and trace all the lines. Remove the tracing paper. Turn the tracing, here it is, traced. Turn the tracing paper upside down. Then I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to scribble over these lines. And that's going to give me graphite on the back of my paper, which is going to be an alternative, in my mind, a better alternative to using tracing paper. One reason is that when you're transferring the design, if you put your hand down, you're not transferring a smudge from a full sheet of tracing paper. And also, what I'm going to get on the page is actually pencil, not whatever's on the tracing paper. And that's not that important for this project because I'm not going to be needing to erase, but sometimes if you use the regular tracing paper and take it off and then want to erase whatever it was on the back of that tracing paper, doesn't come off very well. So in any case, trace the drawing, turn it over, scribble over the lines, turn it back over, and then align the bottom corner with the bottom left corner of your rectangle on your paper. Tape it in place again with that Scotch removable tape, and then I like to use a stylus, which is simply a tool like this with a finer and a thicker end, and you just go over the line, and that pushes the graphite on the back onto your paper. You can also use a ballpoint pen if you don't have one of these. Okay, so we went over the materials and the process for getting your drawing onto your paper. And oh, I should also mention that I like to use a board to tape my paper to. This board is just a piece of some sort of construction board that I got from Home Depot many years ago and cut it into various sizes, and the tape sticks well to it. It's got this waterproof surface on it. It's really nice to use. So I've taped it down on this board, and taping on a board is optional. It's, to my mind, it helps. It helps keep the thing flat. But, you know, you do what works for you. Okay, so I think that is it for transferring the drawing and the supplies involved in that. But now I want to talk about the rest of the supplies we're going to be using in the project. First and foremost, Liquitex matte gel medium, and this is used to seal the paper. We're going to be using lifting techniques, and if I paint directly on the paper, it's going to soak in. It's going to be very hard to lift. So once I have my drawing on my paper, I go over it with a coat of Liquitex matte gel medium. Of course, you can use another brand. Let it dry to the touch. Put a second coat over it. I want to make sure it's really sealed, and then leave that overnight. And I do the same thing with the piece of paper I'm going to be using to practice a couple of the techniques. Okay, so we also need our painting supplies, which in my case are an old water basin that's seen many a project. This is my palette. I've had this for years. It's an old pencil box that I got one August when all the back to school supplies were in the store. And then what I use 1/2 of it as a palette, and I use this deli paper that you can get at Costco and so on. It's what's used to wrap sandwiches. The water basin kind of nicely fits right there. And then I'm going to have my paper towels, and I'm going to use these towels to wipe my brush. And then I have a loose towel just in case I need it. And sometimes I have tissues around too. And I think I mentioned tissues in the supply list. They're good to have handy because if you need one, you don't have it. You needed it right then, not after you can go find it. Brushes. I have a lot of brushes, but I'm not going to use a whole lot on this project. The main one is going to be this one. It's probably, I don't know, an inch and a quarter, inch and an eighth. Just a wash brush. Use it a lot because we're going to be covering large areas. And then also I have a couple rounds, a 6, probably a 4. The numbers don't always stay on the brushes, but some round brushes for detail, and then a liner brush for lines. So brushes. As far as my paints and other materials go, for the paint, I'm using golden fluid acrylics. I like these because I like to work transparent, and these are largely transparent paints. This one isn't particularly, but here's one that really is. So what Golden does is they print these 3 black bars on the label, and then somebody actually paints a bit of the color over it, and you can see how transparent or opaque it is. But anyway, this is what we're going to be using, Golden. And obviously you can use other acrylic paints that you have. We want to try and use transparent colors, and you can test that yourself by just making a black mark on a piece of paper, maybe with a Sharpie, going over it with the paint and seeing how transparent it is. And of course, the more you thin it down with water, the more transparent it's going to get. So we're going to use paints. We're going to use colored pencils. I have a selection of browns, and I will be providing you color swatches in your PDF rather than telling you every brand and color name and so on, because that's not really what matters. What matters is the color, and the colors are available in a lot of different brands. Towards the end of the project, we're going to be using acrylic ink, primarily because it is so highly pigmented. If you don't have acrylic ink and you don't have any reason to want to have it, then you'll be able to use acrylic paint instead. I'm also at the very end reserving the right to use a few splotches of alcohol ink. I think they're nice. It's hard for me to finish a piece without putting a little bit of alcohol ink in it. Okay. Now, we're going to be needing a spray bottle, water. We're also going to be needing rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. And to apply the alcohol, we're going to use a dropper. I have a plastic pipette. I have another pipette that I sometimes use to get water out of my water basin and thin my paints with. So as I look around, that's what I see, and I'm looking at my list, and yes, those are the supplies. So now I would like to talk just a little bit before we get started about some things to remember while you're working on this project. First of all, we need to let go of the need for control. Several of the techniques we're going to be using are not nicely controllable. They're going to do what they want. You know that when you start, and you tell yourself, I'm going to be happy with what turns out. So, this is a very free project. They're moving around in this murky river or lake water. I don't know about you, but I don't have any specific, definite idea of exactly what it looks like down there. But it looks probably not orderly. So letting go of the need to control is perfectly appropriate for this piece. And in fact, if you don't have it, at least for the background, I think you're going to find the technique difficult. You're going to be frustrated and so on. So please just prepare to let the materials do what they want. Now, for the animals, the platypuses, that's a little different story. We want to mold them carefully so that they're 3D and go for more control in those areas. But in general, in the background, forget control. We're going to be working in layers. So layer after layer after layer, we're going to be building this piece up. We're going to be working in baby steps. At some points, you're going to like it. At some points, you maybe aren't going to like it. But we keep going until we're happy. And by the way, working in layers with transparent colors, of course you can work in layers with opaque paints, but you're going to get a different effect because what you put down in this layer is going to cover up what was in the previous layer, and they're just going to peek through depending on where you put your paint. With the transparent layers, it's going to build. Each layer is going to make it darker. So because of that, we want to err on the side of making it lighter than we think we need, then darker, because we can always put another layer on, but we can't take it off. Okay, and the other thing I think to remember is to keep in mind what's important to you about the piece you're working on. And to me, it's a sense of joy and freedom. And that comes in the movement of the animals, and the movement of the animals kind of picks up and mirrors the randomness of the background. So for me, as I work, I want to try and keep in mind a sense of joy and freedom in my mind that transfers onto the paper. And then I want to just say one more thing about painting the animals, about that part. And actually, things that were in my mind as I drew them. So I am not familiar personally with platypuses. As you probably know, they are animals that live in Australia and Tasmania. They are mammals. They are one of only 2 living species of mammals who lay eggs, and the other one's the echidna. So they're very unusual animals, and of course this bill draws your attention also. What is this? Is this part duck or what? Duck and part beaver, or what is it? But actually, this isn't really a bill. It's just, an extension of lips. And this is how they get their food, by shoveling along with what we call their bill. Now, these animals in nature, a lot of animals that live in the water are dark on the top and light on the bottom. This is not true of platypuses. They're the same top and bottom, and actually they're a darkish brown. And I chose to change the color, make them lighter, and also make them somewhat lighter on the stomach. Oh, I got this upside down here. Partly because this is going to be the highlight area anyway. Now I know that underwater, light or the stuff in the water filters out the light and it gets darker and darker as you go down. But still, I think there would be highlights and shadows, and we're going to work with that. And I have used, like I say, a dark or lighter color than they are in nature, just to model them better in this piece. I also don't know if these animals can actually get in these specific positions. But I'm just assuming they can, and this is the position I want for the expression of joy and freedom. So that's where we're at. That's where we're going. I've used my artistic license. I'm ready to start and have fun on this, and I hope you are too. So we'll start in just a sec.